took in everything I'd seen so far throughout the season. Started putting pieces together, looking at brackets, playoff brackets, getting those put up on the hub, brackets for the presentation for the podcast today. Just a bunch of homework and research, just doing a lot of work to get prepared for today and the content we're putting out. So just been a busy couple weeks. Took me off the radar from doing the weekly podcast and putting out probably not as much content as I would have preferred. So all of that kind of busy work, I'll say, obviously in preparation for this very episode of the podcast, the regional playoff edition of the podcast, as well as the playoff preview that you can find on pdspicks.com, where I offer up 3 teams from every region with a chance to claim some hardware this postseason. So go to the website, be sure to check that out. Touches on a lot of stuff that I might not get to here on the podcast. So be sure to check that one out, pdspicks.com. Today on the podcast, going to be doing some bracketology, full breakdown of all 3 divisions, all 24 regionals, who makes it to Plymouth, who comes up just short, and I just might have the perfect bracket. Never been done before. I mean, unofficially, anyways. So if any of that grabs your attention, be sure to hit the follow button on YouTube. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, be sure to subscribe there as well. Full disclosure, 2 things before we get too far. Likely to be a pretty lengthy episode, but I will go region by region, highlighting my picks, talking about a bunch of teams, and then obviously cap it all off with state championship picks as well. And then 2, I apologize if the quality of the audio and or video is a little spotty. Bear with me today on the episode. Operating off of a mobile hotspot for today. So fingers crossed, no issues on the live broadcast. But if it is bad or I got to jump back on because I get booted off, we'll just be sure to do it again. So, all right. So let's talk some hockey, shall we? Let me get situated here first. I have to, how do I want to do this? Let me oops. We're almost there. I guess I jumped the gun on that. There we go. Boom. Here we go. So we'll go through the brackets. I'll kind of do my bracketology, talk through the picks as we go. We will start with, obviously, Division 1. Before I get too far into the brackets, let me give just an overall. Let me bounce back here. Oh, not what I wanted. Let me try that one more time. Do I just have to do that? There we go. Okay. Technical difficulties, working it out on the fly. Let me just offer up quickly kind of my overview on Division 1 before I start going region by region. So 6 of the teams in my top 25 come from Division 1. Really feels like it's CC's to lose. You know, at the beginning of the season, I even put out a poll on the website and said, CC or the field, which one are you taking? And as we sit here today on, February 19th, I'd still offer that same deal to any of you listening or watching. If I take CC, are you willing to take the field? I just feel like it's CC's to lose at this point. They've won 4 in a row, going for 5. That would tie the school's own record for most consecutive state championships. This year's team may be the deepest they've ever been, with a state leading 14 players in double figures in points. Depth to me is kind of the difference this time of year. And guys like Andrew Atala, Josh Granowitz, Colin Dell, Jordan Deagle, those guys to me are the ones that are going to make the difference there for a Catholic Central team. Obviously, you got the top guys, Brooks Rogowski, Jackson Walsh, but these middle of the lineup type guys are the ones that really separate CC from the rest here. So incredible luxury to have there throughout the middle, the heart of your lineup, really. So a couple other players in the mix. Obviously, Brighton, Cam Duffney, Lane Petit, Levi Penela. Is this the year they finally get it done? Like, there's a lot of pressure on the Bulldogs this season. And especially when that's been the narrative, I feel like there's just a lot of expectations, pressure, gripping the stick a little too tight. What's going to happen with that group? I like them to get to Plymouth. But then what happens on the biggest stage there? Like I said, with all those outside influences, gripping the stick a little too tight, what happens there then on the big stage? So it could be a very stressful run for the Bulldogs. Then you also have Heartland and Clarkston there, both tucked into the same regional, coming out of that mid-Michigan quarter of the bracket, so to speak. That's likely to be the toughest game at the regional level that the Eagles have ever played under Coach Rick Gadwa there in his 13-year run. Winner of that game has a real shot to get to the championship game, I think. Heartland knows it can hang with Brighton and can kind of play that underdog role, that underdog card there this time of year is super valuable. Similar story there for Clarkston as well. They're my one wild card there in D1 just because, that top line is nasty. The defensive group is good, and the goaltending has been solid too. So, plus on top of all that going on for the Wolves, they also got a bit of a chip on their shoulder, something to prove there a little bit. That they do belong with the Brightons, the Heartlands, the CCs of the bunch. Played CC really tough earlier in the year too. So that mentality, I think, can make a huge difference there. So whoever kind of comes out of that between Heartland and Clarkston could be a real legitimate contender there. So, okay, let me bounce back to the double box here. We'll throw this back on and we'll go into regional play. And I'll do this. Here we go. We'll start with Region 1. I'm going to take a quick drink here. West Side region here. I actually, I wrote on the blog on pdspicks.com. I think this might be one of the toughest regions in terms of overall competition. 5 teams, and they're separated by 40-ish spots in the statewide rankings, according to my hockey rankings. Just speaks to the overall competition, like I said, top to bottom, 1 through 5 here. Obviously, I'm taking Mona Shores there to advance and set up a matchup there with Sparta. That sets a pretty chalky matchup there, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sparta, I love this Sparta team. They're not just a feel-good story this season. They've got some dudes that can play, and they've been coached up super well. It's a group that's been together for a very long time. Caden Gleason, Trevor Serba is a young budding prospect who had a big year. I believe both of those guys have scored 20 goals this season. Both of these Muskegon teams, I think, could provide a tough matchup there for Sparta as well, though. Puffer comes in pretty hot. They've already beaten Sparta this season. Jackson Stone, Tyler Tyndall have had a good run together. How do they kind of put a bow on things in their final go around together? Mona Shores, on the other hand, it's not going to be, or who do I got? Yeah, Reith Puffer, by the way, that's also not going to be easy to get past Rockford in that instance. Let me bounce here. I'll get you my regional final matchup there, Sparta versus Reith Puffer. But Sparta's going to have a tough time getting by Mona Shores. Like, I'm not going to sleep on that either. If you get into a track meet with a team like Mona, that's a team who back and forth, it could cost you. So they don't need, Mona Shores, that is, doesn't need good goaltending in this regional to win. It just needs to be good enough. And their top guys can essentially outscore the opponent in some instances. Nathan and Brady Tilden, Lee Brandt, Habitler, like the firepower is there. The question will be, does Mona play their style of game, or is it a team like Reith Puffer or Sparta able to X and O them to death with schemes and forechecks and solid defense? Will kind of be the difference there. But ultimately here, if I can bounce back, going with Sparta to get it done. Like I said, I love that team. They've been on a tremendous run. I would love to see them kind of cap it off with a regional title here as well. That would be big for a program that's been on the rise for the last 18 months or so, and continue that trajectory coming off of a season that ends in hardware. So we'll get into Region 2 here. Staying on the west side here, you got both Forest Hill schools. Who do I got here? I got a Tucker, Jenison, Caledonia, West Ottawa, and East Kentwood. To me, this really does come down to a matchup. The third edition this season of the War of the Woods. The previous 2 meetings, They tied 3-3 back in December. Then Central topped Northeastern 3-0 in January. But despite that loss, the Bird Dogs actually outshot Forest Hill Central 37-16 in that game. So the Bird Dogs, the Husky Hawks, very capable of hanging with Forest Hill Central. Then you cap on put on top of the fact that it's a heated rivalry game, crosstown rivals. Barn is likely to be bumping, student sections, the whole nine. That environment on a regional final Wednesday could be pretty bananas. So really could go either way there. And you know what? There's one kid off of that Northeastern team I really like too, Nolan Gino, just a freshman. He's only got 5 points on the season, but when I saw them at the MIHL showcase, this was a center going every other shift. You don't see that very often out of freshmen, especially for a team of that caliber. So, and fit the part. He was doing a fantastic job. Definitely stood out with his skating ability and just overall play. So, definitely a kid I'm keeping my eye on for the future, and one that could certainly have an impact, not just this season, but beyond. And then they've got some other guys you'd be worried about too: McGinnis, Hall. I'm taking, if I can bounce here, I'm taking Forest Hill Central, but be on upset alert here because I'm a little hesitant, hesitantly taking my Forest Hill Central Rangers there in what could be like I said, a very tough rivalry regional matchup. And then obviously they're at the quarterfinal level. I'm going to finish this off here. Forest Hill Central kind of continues that run. I like Sparta, like I said, but still might be a year away from making a run at the state level for a program like that. I think I got to see success before I start projecting success for the Spartans. On the flip side, Forest Hill Central already kind of has that track record, has been there before, has played in these moments. It's not going to be too big for them. I think they'll handle the moment well and get over there on Sparta in a West Side quarterfinal matchup. Let me see. There we go. All right, we'll go into Region 3. This is basically mid-Michigan-ish teams, and then your Southwest Michigan. A lot of the South Central Hockey League. You got both Kalamazoo schools. You got Cap City, obviously. I'm going to maybe fast forward a little bit here. Again, chalk. I think chalk is going to prevail. Chalk meaning the top seeds kind of win out here. I think that's going to very much be the narrative, especially in Division One. I love the seeding format. I'm really looking forward to potentially the downsizing of and going to 2 divisions as opposed to 3, so that we get regionals ranked 1 through 8, 1 through 10. We see kind of seeding play even more of a role in some of these matchups and really driving better competitive matchups at the playoff or in playoffs. So ultimately, I do have chalk prevailing quite often, as you'll see here, especially in Division One. But ultimately, I like Howell to get to the regional final. I think that's a pretty good path for them. On the other side, I like Cap City a lot. I'm taking them here, but I'm very apprehensive. Cap City is a young team. I don't want to say volatile because, like I said, it's a young squad. They've had really great moments. They've had really good performances that'll cause you to take a step back, be like, wow, this team's on the right trajectory. And then they've had some other games where maybe you expect them to win and they just come out a little flat. I think that is, again, indicative of a young team. You would expect some of those results from a young team. But from a playoff perspective, makes me a little apprehensive. East Side, that's a team I think Cap City can beat, but it's also a team that's beaten Cap City at least once, maybe twice this year. I'd have to double check there. But nonetheless, I think that 2-3 matchup, highly contested, should be a very good game there in the semifinal. Ultimately sets the stage then to play Howell in the regional final. And up until yesterday, I actually had Cap City win in this one. But ultimately, I'm going with Howell in this particular region. Howell, to me, is a team that's not limping into the playoffs, but maybe not their best foot forward going into the postseason. So I think there's some susceptibility, some vulnerabilities where a team like Cap City or East Side could kind of pull off that upset. East Side with a great goaltender there. in Reed Druer, who's capable of stealing not one but two games, and put them into the regional championship. So that's one who I think could give Howell fits if it's like a 1-0, 2-1 game there going late into the third period. What does Howell do? How do they react in that instance where, they've already kind of been struggling a little bit as of late, and now you're facing some postseason uh, conflict, stress, pressure? How do you handle that? Cap City here, I think, is very capable of giving Howell a great punch. They've played some tough teams this season. Houghton, Cap City played Houghton, Hancock, Brighton played Northville last weekend, took them to overtime. So it's a team capable of very much giving Howell a tough game. Initially, like I said, picked Cap City in this spot, but that's asking them to do something they haven't quite yet done all season long, and that's winning in that underdog role. They're very much an underdog here. Ultimately, I think at this stage of the game, talent's going to carry you. Talent's going to put you over the top here, and Howell has some dogs in that instance where you look at guys like Escala, Hootery, Sturos, just to name a few there. So I'm taking Howell here to get it done in Region 3. We'll move on here to Region 4. Probably one of the most anticipated regions in Division 1 because of the top two seeds here in Heartland and Clarkston. Obviously, I got these two teams on a collision course for the regional final, and would just be a great game here for high school hockey as a whole. I hate that it's happening at the regional level. I wish there was a way for both of these teams to get to the state semis. Excuse me. Geez, get to the Final Four is what I wanted to say, because I think they both absolutely belong there in the mix in Division 1. But with it happening here at the regional level, Heartland is a team that's won 12 consecutive regional championships. I mentioned that a little bit earlier on the podcast, and this matchup is likely to be the toughest game they've played at the regional level in Rick Gadwa's tenure. Clarkston, very capable of getting the W here. Talked about it earlier. Chatter about Clarkston has kind of tapered off as the seasons went on, and that actually might be the way they want it, right? They're flying under the radar a little bit now. At the beginning of the season, they were a lot of people's team on the rise, players you got to watch. Ronnie Wade, Owen Croston, he was the top player in my top 100 names to know. So Clarkston was generating a lot of buzz early in the season, and I think that's kind of tapered off as the season's worn on. But still, you got guys like Brady Damien and Nets, another one. I got his name here staring me in the face. They just got guys who can play in a sound back end. To me, Clarkston wins this game if Brady Damien stands on his head. And then conversely, Heartland wins if they stay out of the box and play 5-on-5 hockey, because I think their depth will ultimately pull them away in this type of matchup. So as long as it doesn't turn into a special teams affair, I like Heartland to get it done there. So I am going with the Eagles here. That's going to set up a Livingston County matchup there in the quarterfinals between Heartland and Howell. That's a matchup, obviously, that went Heartland's way there in the regular season. Again, I got it going Heartland's way in the playoffs, and Heartland getting back to the Final Four for a big potential matchup coming up in a little bit. So let's see here. We'll go into Region 5. Where am I at here? What do I have? Oh, okay. Oh, man, I'm looking at my notes. It says East Side, but when I said East Side, I'm thinking it's the East Side Stars, not the east side of the state. So clearly, this region is the East Side teams here. Romeo, the top seed. This is another region, 7 teams in it. First of all, I love that. It's a full region. It's a good look. That's what a regional playoff bracket should look like. Very competitive. Basically, all of these teams have competed against one another this season. And I laugh. I pointed out the transitive property on the blog on pdspicks.com. Ike beat Utica Unified. Utica Unified beat Lance Cruz. Lance Cruz beat Chip Valley. Chip Valley beat Anchor Bay. Anchor Bay beat Romeo. I really think this particular region could be a hot mess. Now, I say that, but ultimately, I'm going with a lot of chalk here, with Romeo one getting to the regional final, but then taking Chip Valley there over Anchor Bay. Chip Valley is getting hot at the right time. I think I've mentioned him a few times now, but Nate Hall has had a really added a really nice wrinkle to that offense, who already had a couple nice pieces there, and Cam Staskowski and Kevin Dolney. Now you're adding Nate Hall coming back from injury. That's been huge for them. They've got a real chance here, I think, at pulling off an upset, so to speak. I don't know how huge of an upset it would necessarily be, considering Chip Valley's already beaten Romeo this season. But I still don't know that they have an answer for Cameron Cyrus in net for Romeo. He's 7-3-1 on the season. He's got a 9.23 save percentage for the Bulldogs. Has a proven track record for kind of snuffing out those East Side teams. I just don't see an East Side team topping the Bulldogs because of him in net. So I'm going with Romeo here to get that regional championship. On the other side, Region 6, I'm just going to buzz through this relatively quick. Look, it's Catholic Central, and for the other teams in this region, it's unfortunate. Like, I hate it because M1, Lakes area, Bloomfield Hills are having some really nice seasons in their own rights. And so probably the narrative, regardless of who gets stuck in a region with CC, there's a lot of good storylines and a lot of good wrinkles across the board. But M1 is a talented bunch. Charlie Price is having a hell of a year. Logan Eland, Zach Steiner, Kyle Passwater. There's a lot to like about that bunch, and so it's a tough draw there. Lakes area, Jacob Van Zweden, guy I took notice of in the MDHL this fall. I thought that league served him very well, kind of getting high level competition and exposure, and he's taken that into the winter season now, and had a great campaign for the Lakes area co-op. So he's been a great story all season as well. I look at Bloomfield Hills. I'd heard about Nick Elizarov a few years back, kind of considering the high school route. Do I do it? Do I stick with AAA? Like, what path do I ultimately want to go down? And I was very, very happy to see him kind of come out his senior season and have the year that he did there for the Blackhawks. So all great storylines, but as I wrote on the blog, CC has reached Thanos status, and they are inevitable. So CC again likely to roll through that region. And then get to the Final Four here over Romeo as well. We'll have a little bit more on them, obviously, as we take a look at the Division I Final Four here in a minute. So, okay, getting into Region 7, you got a fistful of KLAA schools and then a pair of SEC schools as well playing in that play-in game, the 4-5 matchup. Taking Saline there over Pioneer to set up a rematch of the regional final last year. I do think, let me see, where's my notes? I do think I had Saline down as a bit of a long shot to win this region. I'm not completely counting them out because they got a guy like Tyler Schroeder in net. He's a guy who made 40 plus saves in a 2-1 game or something like that against Livonia Stevenson earlier in the season. So Saline has seen the type of firepower they're going to face in Brighton, and they have a goalie in Tyler Schroeder who can handle that workload. So if you have that, you've at least got a chance, a puncher's chance there. And they have some talented forwards. Mateo Idapalo and Blake Woodrell are two guys I'm real high on. So if they generate a scoring opportunity or two and can capitalize on it, make good on it, there's potential for an upset there, I'll say. But ultimately, I'm going with Brighton and then Northville, and I think this is a bit of a tricky matchup there for the Bulldogs. I mentioned that stress, that pressure that they're going to be under. Northville could make this very interesting. Coach Ryan Ossenmacher has a pretty lengthy resume going back to his days with Salem. taking on superior opponents. He was stuck in a regional with CC or had to go through them in the quarterfinals. So outgunned, outmatched, but was still able to kind of gut out and scratch and claw and make it a 1-0 or 2-1 type game. I could see that happening with Brighton here as well. So Northville has seen Brighton before. They're not going to be intimidated, by the logo on the chest or anything like that. Marinoff, Vysotsky, they're going to have to. It's going to be the same struggle that Celine is going to face in the semifinal. Is you're only going to have so many offensive opportunities. And if you only get 2 or 3, you better make good on 2 or 3 because they're going to be tough to come by against Brighton. So that's the only path there as far as an upset goes. But ultimately, I do have the Bulldogs prevailing and getting to a big matchup here with potentially another KLAA opponent here as we get to Region 8. Okay, Stevenson, Salem. I picked Salem to win the KLAA East over Stevenson in the preseason back in October, November. That did not come to fruition, despite the Rocks splitting a pair of games there with the Spartans. Game 3, the rubber match on the season. I'm actually going to go back to the well with Salem. May not have won the division as I predicted, but they win the one that matters here and claim a regional championship over a young Spartans team. May end up eating crow for that pick as well, but rolling with the Rocks here as they go into a quarterfinal matchup with, again, a familiar foe there in the Brighton Bulldogs. But ultimately, Brighton gets back to the Final Four. That's going to set up a very interesting matchup there in the Final Four. And actually, why don't we get right to that? I'll set the stage here for the Division I Final Four. CC, Brighton, Heartland, Forest Hill Central. Does that look familiar? Does that sound familiar? Could be a lot of familiarity, a lot of familiar faces there back in Plymouth for the Division I Final Four. Brighton, Heartland. Oh, where do I want to start here? Do I want to start with? All right, I'll start with the 1-4 matchup first. This is a rematch from last season's state semifinals. Feels like the end of the line yet again for my Rangers. I think it's a better showing overall than maybe the 5-0 game that they lost in 2023. But CC still prevails. It's a young team for Forest Hill Central. Back-to-back Final Fours. Still something to hang their hats on. A lot of those key guys should be back for a potential 3rd playoff run next fall as well. I hate to kind of emphasize any moral victories, but ultimately, like I said, CC is just too much there. Forest Hill Central, though, a lot of nice pieces, a lot of great experience from the last 2 seasons that should snowball and maybe even peak with an amazing 24-25 season as we maybe look way ahead. So I got CC there over Forest Hill Central. Brighton, Heartland on the other half. Livingston County shuts down completely for the 2nd year in a row as Heartland and Brighton square off in Plymouth. Brighton holds a 2-1 advantage over the Eagles in 3 games this season. I've liked this Heartland team all season. They come in to this spot with nothing to prove and a ton to gain. All the pressure's on Brighton in this spot. So I like Ian Castamo and company to get it done and get to that final matchup that maybe no one was really expecting here. So, and then as far as CC and Heartland, I think Heartland throws a real great punch in this. Maybe like a 4-2, 3-1 type game. They played CC tough earlier in the regular season, but really, what more can I say about CC? At the beginning of the season, I said we were witnessing one of those great runs. You look back at like the Patriots in the NFL, right? And people are like, wow, they really dominated that much. They went to 9 Super Bowls. Like, yeah, they really went to 9 Super Bowls and we had to live through it. This instance, kind of the same thing. Like, if you're a part of it, it's something very special. If you're a victim of it, it's extremely frustrating. They continue to be the top dog in my mind until someone proves otherwise, and gotten it done in a variety of ways. Elite goaltending, phenomenal defense last year, not allowing a single goal against. Top offensive talent when they had guys like Brendan Miles and oh jeez, um, I'll leave it at Brendan Miles. I'm blanking on the other kid's name. That's terrible. But nonetheless, I think now this season, the biggest reason for this run is just the sheer depth. And I like Catholic Central to once again uh, continue their reign over Division One. So, okay, let me move on. That'll clear the board there, and we'll get into Division Two. I'll take a quick moment here. All right, how are we doing time wise? I don't want to inundate you guys, but we are 31 minutes in here. 7 people on, too. I'll take that. How's everybody doing? Let's see. Do I have a chat here? Yeah, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know your picks as well there for Division One. And yeah, if you're enjoying the stream, you're enjoying the bracketology, we'll continue to do more of this in the future. We look into next year and beyond, and I like doing this stuff, the little interactive, the bracketology, the rankings. We've done top 10 rankings this way as well. So if you guys are liking it, let me know. We can always do more. So, okay, let's get into Division Two. But before I really get into any of the bracketology, I'll bounce back here just so I can kind of give you my overall on Division Two. 7 teams in my top 25 competing in Division Two. Comes down in my mind really to Byron Center, Trenton, De La Salle, and Brother Rice. It comes down to those 4 to me. Byron Center back, looking to follow through this time after coming up just short last season, and really almost having the trophy in their grasps before being ripped away there by a great comeback performance by Brother Rice. Trenton, maybe one of their, I mentioned this earlier, maybe one of their best all-around teams in recent memory, truly. Top to bottom, left to right. De La Salle, best goaltender in the division, question mark. I really like Zalkowski and what he brings to De La Salle, and really the stability he provides to everyone else in front of him. And then you really still got the boogeyman and Brother Rice. They started out super slow, looked vulnerable. A lot of people had kind of written them off or counted them out. Maybe even myself included to a degree. After their slow start and some of those early performances. But they've bounced back in a huge way and are right back in the playoff picture. So, what do they bring to the table now as we head into the playoffs? And a couple newcomers, or maybe not newcomers per se, but kind of that second tier who's a threat to upset the apple cart, so to speak. Bay City, Allen Park, U of D could all kind of make things interesting as well. So a lot to get in here, as I'll go back to the double box and we'll go into regional action here. We got Region 9. This is basically Northern Michigan, Midland Dow, Traverse City, that whole neck of the woods. Now, this is pretty interesting to me because Traverse City Central, the top seed in the tournament, has roughly a 2-hour trip one way to make it to the host site in Midland to play these games. I do think that could potentially play a factor in the outcome of these games. Just bus legs and kind of that home cooking, right? Midland and Midland Dow using their own locker rooms and the comfort level and sleeping in their own. Well, I guess Central would still be sleeping in their own beds, but you know what I mean. Just that luxury of being 10 minutes away from the rink and not having to hop on a bus and drive 2 hours can certainly play a factor. So this season, I think, was going to be a bit of a learning experience. Let me move ahead here a little bit and we'll set the stage there for the regional final, and then I'll kind of elaborate. I think this season kind of was set up to be a bit of a learning experience for a young Traverse City Central squad. But now I believe they won they won a conference championship, was my understanding. And then on top of that, you're the favorite to win your regional. It's very impressive if all that comes true for the Trojans. Coach Givens is He's one of the best. And even though they're young, I think it's a fortuitous spot for guys like Graham Peters and Lakin Batcha, Arthur McManus, like to get some hardware and to really have something to show for this season. So the commute certainly sucks. They're the top seed in the region, as I mentioned, still having to drive, 2 hours to play. It's unfortunate. Um, I think that opens the door potentially for either the Chemics or the Chargers to pull off a potential upset there. Midland won the only head-to-head matchup with Midland Dow this season, but Dow actually outshot the Chemics 38-27. It's one of my more favorite stats when you're kind of looking at the box score or you want to break down the game a little bit. You outshoot somebody that much, that means you're in possession of the puck more. That means you've got more possession time, more opportunities to make plays. So may have fallen short in their previous meeting, but I do think that puts them in at least a decent spot to contend there in that semifinal. I'm taking Midland cautiously there, but then ultimately taking Traverse City Central to prevail, regardless of who's kind of on that other side of the bracket there in Region 9. Let me move into Region 10 here. We still kind of stay in that mid-Michigan pocket here. Bay City, Saginaw Heritage is really what this comes down to for me. I did get a good look at Tri-Valley over the weekend. And hang on, I want to make sure I get this right. So I'm going to pull this up real quick. So I checked out Tri-Valley and South Lyon on Saturday afternoon. And I just wanted to give this kid a bit of a shout out because it was I wasn't expecting it certainly, but the kid in net, I believe it was Noah Wakefield, was actually a pretty decent showing. And then as I kind of dive into the numbers, Tri Valley is a sub 500 team. They might have struggled a little bit, right? I think it was a bit of a short bench. I even noticed, watching the game, but sub 500 team. But Wakefield, he's got a 203 goals against average. Like, he ain't easy to score against. I saw they had played, my old squad, Celine, to a 0-0 game, I believe it was, or something to that effect. I got their team page pulled up right here, so I might as well get it right. Come on now. Played Celine last week to a 0-0 tie. And, I know Coach Kyle Zagata very well. I know what that squad brings to the table. So, to have that 0-0 tie, obviously you got a good stalemate between the two goalies. And, Wakefield, like I said, made some, it wasn't just the initial saves. It was kind of the ad-libbed saves, the second, third opportunities. Your pads are kind of going like a pinball machine. Boom, 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 boom. And he's making multiple saves. I just wanted to give a shout out there to Wakefield. Saw him in net and was pretty impressed by the kid. Did a really nice job there. And then they end up losing to South Lyon, but like I said, still a good performance from him, I thought, and stuck with me. So as we look at this, obviously, I think it comes down to Bay City and Heritage. And I received a message last week that said everyone's going to pick Bay City, but I guarantee Heritage wins. Guarantee. And I just will not accept such slander towards my Bay City Wolves. Zach Schalk, my brother. Gunnar Weber, my cousin. Nash Leonard, my nephew. Watching this team this season, they've become my adopted family. I got a soft spot here for Bay City. So to the person in my DMs, I am picking Bay City. And I guarantee the Wolves will win. In all seriousness, though, Heritage actually beat Bay City like 2 weeks ago. Outshot them, probably outplayed them to a degree. So even though Bay City is the top seed here, they may actually be the underdog in this matchup. But I don't care. Wolves win. Get it done. On to the state playoffs, state tournament. Let's get it done by Bay City. Let's go. And then obviously here, this is actually a very unique matchup to me. Central, Bay City. I could go either way with it. I'm gonna go with my love affair and ride Bay City to the Final Four, get to Plymouth. It's been a storybook season for the Wolves. I think it continues into a playoff run. uh, and cap it off with a trip to Plymouth. That would be something. So. Okay, we will continue moving. I think we go to the west side now. Yep, with Region 11. Let me kind of burn through this a little bit. This feels like Byron Center could cruise through this region. And I don't mean that as a slight to any of the other teams in this grouping. But I think their playoff run begins much like their regular season run began. They went 20 games right out of the gate, unbeaten. A Byron Center team that just looked like they had something to prove coming out of uh, last season's uh, last season's run, and really looking to get that sour taste out of their mouths and striving for a championship here. So I don't see the Bulldogs facing much resistance really until they get to the Final Four, and even then could have a pretty favorable matchup in the semifinals as well. So BC, I got them getting back to the state final. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but that starts obviously with a dominant showing here at the regional level first. As we get into Region 12, we get back towards maybe some of the mid-Michigan teams, the Ann Arbor schools, obviously South Lyon. I don't know if that's technically considered mid-Michigan, but anyways. So again, I mentioned, watched South Lyon over the weekend. This may be their best shot at winning a regional championship in over a decade. That program has one regional championship to its name, and that was back in 2009. Most of these kids on the team now were still in diapers the last time that happened. So it's a very favorable draw, I think, for Coach Dennis Gagnon's squad. They're also the top seed, which is nice. So I got them getting to the regional final. This 2-3 matchup is very interesting to me. The two Ann Arbor schools, Gabriel Richard and Skyline, actually played to a 2-2 tie earlier in the season. I'm leaning in favor of the Irish here just because of Coach Clint Robert in his experience at this level of the season. He's been in tough playoff matchups. He's won, he got a lot of hardware to his name and to the program's name, knows what it takes to get it done. So I'm leaning that way in the semifinals. I'm also leaning that way in the championship. I unfortunately don't think it's coming to fruition there for South Lyon. But honestly, after seeing them this weekend, they certainly have the tools and the pieces. Gavin Mulcahy, for instance, he's a goal scorer. So if you can get loose, if you can create some of those opportunities, could absolutely pull the ups. Not an upset there. I'm not going to call that an upset. How dare you, Craig? South Lyon, Ann Arbor, Gabriel Richard. Fully expect that to be a very close game. Could go either way, maybe even overtime. Add some excitement to that one, eh? But then moving on to a quarterfinal matchup with Byron Center. And as I mentioned, I got Byron Center rolling there. So, okay, we will continue on. We are halfway through Division 2. And I will set the stage here for Region 13. I mentioned the kind of turnaround Brother Rice has gone through this season. I'm very impressed by it. I didn't really doubt it to a degree, but I didn't think it would be this swift, this strong. To a degree, they looked DOA at the beginning of the season, and now they're in a position to really contend for another state championship. I've got a very interesting matchup between Rice and Lakeland here. Lakeland won't be an easy hump to get over. Paul Baker is the real deal in net. He could kind of stifle this Rice offense and keep that game close into the later stages. And I do worry, if that happens, I do worry, again, you can start gripping the stick tight. We're still dealing with kids, man. It's a high pressure situation. Every shift matters. What happens in those instances? So if it's a 2-1 or 1-0 game after 34 minutes, what's that look like in the third period? So on the flip side, though, I do worry that maybe the Warriors will just be very strategic in their approach, and that Lakeland won't have an answer to that kind of opposing forecheck or an aggressive PK. We got a power play. Great. This is our opportunity. And then you got Rice's PK bearing down on you on a forecheck or applying a ton of pressure in zone. It's just a very calculated X's and O's approach to the game that I don't think Lakeland has seen a lot this season. So Lakeland kind of thrives on that freelance style, off the cuff, improv hockey. And Rice, I think, is going to take a lot of those opportunities away. So I'm going with Brother Rice with continues kind of that huge turnaround now with a regional championship with a real good chance at getting back to the Final Four as well. So Baker keeps the Eagles in the game, but ultimately Rice prevails. Region 14, again, a bunch of MIHL teams mixed in with some East Side guys. I'm going to burn through this a little bit. De La Salle, Port Huron Northern. I think it's a great draw for De La Salle and first-year coach Chad LaRose. He's done a great job with the squad in year one, and they'll likely be rewarded for their efforts with some hardware here. Port Huron Northern, I think, provides a bit of a scare in the regional final, just that familiarity with one another in the MIHL. It's always a red flag this time of year because you're not going to be intimidated. You know what to expect. You know what the other team is bringing into the matchup. They played each other twice this season. Pilots won pretty decisively both times, but the Huskies have dudes, man. Bryson Smith is a shooter. They've got weapons. If De La Salle kind of checks out or mails one in, and they could be in a spot where they're down 2-1 after 2 periods and kind of get a bit of a reality check and got to wake up on short time. So ultimately, I'm taking the Pilots to prevail to set the table for a very unique MIHL matchup in the quarterfinals. And again, I think this is another unique matchup. I'd have to pull it up real quick. I forget how this regular season matchup went down. If you bear with me, I can probably figure it out momentarily. Pretty sure it was De La Salle potentially earlier in the season. If it was earlier in the season, this could really change things. Pulling up Rice. Sorry, I'm sure this is not what you want to be watching or listening as I buzz through on my computer. So De La Salle looks like they won the only matchup this season between these two teams back in late January. Take a quick peek at this too, real quick. 5-3 shots, pretty even. I mean, that doesn't really change my pick here. I took De La Salle to get it done and upend the reigning, defending Division II state champion. This matchup in particular to me, and that's why I said the previous matchup, like I'm mentioning stats and everything, but Gavin Zalkowski to me is just the difference maker in net. I think offensively these two teams are pretty evenly matched, and I think Zalkowski just gives them a leg up in goal that not just Brother Rice, but many teams in Division II don't match up well or don't have an answer for. So taking De La Salle there to get to the state semifinals. Okay, we'll go into Region 15. And this is a very interesting one to me here. Let me pull up my notes. It may be one of the bigger surprises of all my picks at the regional level. And I just got to preface it, like, I love Coach Paul Moretz. I love this Cubs team. Been very high on them all season long. They've got a ton of talent. But I'd be lying if I said they weren't reeling right now. 3-7-1 to close out the regular season. They've given up 6 or more goals 5 times in that stretch as well. It's a team that's susceptible. There's some vulnerabilities there, and I said it earlier in the season. With this particular team, when things are good, they are great. When we score 3 goals, we score 7 goals. When things are bad, they are awful. We give up 2 goals, we give up 4 goals, we give up 6 goals. Volatility is terrifying come playoff time. So there's still time. They could pull it together and go on a deep playoff run. All the pieces are there. I've mentioned some of the top level talent they have ad nauseum this season. But I wrote on the blog, the sum needs to be greater than its parts for that to happen. And I think they're susceptible. I think this is an Allen Park team that's got a lot to prove. They've got some weapons and some pieces in place. Jack Miller can keep them in the game. And I'm taking Allen Park here to pull off the upset over U of D, despite these two teams actually playing just a few days ago. And U of D topped the Jags 4-0 in that game. I don't read too much into that result, just because I'm sure both teams are kind of keeping cards close to the chest, knowing that they could potentially see each other 10 days later. So I'm not overanalyzing that particular game too much. Um, if anything, and I think you schedule this game that way so that you get a look at your opponent. You know how you size up. When you go in 10 days later, you're not intimidated by that opponent. You know what to expect. So um, maybe a bit of a shocker there. But like I said, Allen Park on top of Jack Miller, they've got some hockey players. They just got hockey players who can make plays. And I think one goal can turn into two, two can turn into three or four real quick, and then the pressure is on. So should be an interesting one there in Region 15. We'll dive into 16 here, but go pretty quick. Trenton, I think their draw is pretty similar to that of CC's draw in Division One. Trenton is kind of just that unstoppable force right now, in my opinion. And then when you look at um, the other teams in this region, Trenton is just a very complete team, and nobody at this level of the tournament has the depth or the weapons at all three levels that they do. So I will say, though, I do want to mention Lenawee United has a top line that is absolutely capable of playing with Trenton. Rhett McAuliffe is the real deal. He's a dangerous player and can absolutely hold court with anybody that the Trojans have. So that program, Lenawee, has had a bit of a historic run this season. I think they tied their single season win total for most in a season. So, but I think in order for that run to continue, they'd have to score 4, 5, 6 goals to put away this Trenton team, and I just don't see that happening, unfortunately. Not unless that top line can play 51 minutes at top level. So okay, and then we get into Trenton, Allen Park, another familiar matchup there. But ultimately, I'm taking Trenton just as I mentioned, the depth, the weapons that they have throughout their lineup is just too much, especially at this stage of the tournament. I got Trenton getting to the Division Two Final Four, and with that, I'll kind of set the stage here for my Final Four picks. Byron Center, De La Salle, Trenton, Bay City. I believe, according to NPR, that is how the seating would unfold. So with that, I guess I'll start with Byron Center, Bay City. I think this is the end of the line for Bay City, but I will say, Gunnar Weber, he's a top talent in the state for that Bay City team. I think he's had an influence on that program. You look at the younger guys like Lucas Neiman, Sean Daly, the torch is kind of getting passed there in Bay City a little bit. I think those guys can continue the success that the Wolves have had this season. So I don't see this program being a flash in the pan. They could be a good contender there in mid-Michigan for the foreseeable future. And that's exciting. That's a good thing. You look at Clarkston, who was kind of that flash in the pan last season, and they're here to stay, obviously, with a ton of talent still on the team this year and in the pipeline coming up. So the more teams that kind of make their mark, Forest Hill Central, another one, kind of make that run and then stay a legitimate contender or a legitimate threat year over year. I think that's a great thing for Michigan high school hockey, and I think Bay City could very well be one of those teams in the future. So, and because of guys like Gunnar Weber leaving your mark on the program, leaving that legacy, so to speak, and building up the guys around you. So ultimately, like I said, taking Byron Center there, even if it is a Traverse City Central or a Heritage or a Midland school in this particular spot, I just don't see anyone denying Byron Center at this stage of the tournament. Bulldogs get back to the title game. And then on the other side, De La Salle, Trenton. I think that has the potential to be one of the best Final Four games on the weekend. They tied on opening weekend of the season 2-2. Both of those programs, I think, have come a long way since then. I've mentioned Zalkowski multiple times now on the podcast, but he's the reason why I think the Pilots have such a great chance at winning the whole freaking thing, if I'm being honest. So, but Trenton, I think, is a real threat to play spoiler in Division Two playoffs, not just to De La Salle here in the semifinals, but even if they get to the championship game, as I'm picking here, I think they've got the potential to upset Byron Center in this particular matchup too. So, uh, a championship game here between Trenton and the Bulldogs, I would expect it to be great back and forth action, maybe a few lead changes even. Pressure filled moments. Is BC finally going to hang on this year? Oh, Trenton's got BC. Trenton's got BC on the ropes. Um, like, I just I think you could see a lot of different storylines unfolding with this particular matchup. Potential comebacks, that type of thing. Just great drama in this particular matchup. And I'm going to take Byron Center on a mission all season long, sees it through, finishes the job, gets it done this time, taking a state title back to the west side of Michigan for the first time since 2011. How about that? Okay, so we will. I guess I'll take a quick minute here. I don't want to open up the regions just yet. I got to give my preview of Division Three. I do think Division Three is the toughest, hardest. I don't know if I can say best because I don't really know how you say which one's best, but I think Division Three is the toughest one to win of the three when you consider the fact that 12 of the teams in my top 25 are Division Three teams. I think that says a lot just about the overall depth. Let me bounce back here. Just the overall depth of the division. I don't really love that from a playoff standpoint, right? You kind of want your top division to be the best division, and hockey, high school hockey has perennially maybe not been that way for a lot of years now. Um, D3 has kind of been seen as the most competitive, and then Division Two there when it was Stevenson and Heartland in the mix with Brother Rice and Trenton and things like that. Division Two was kind of seen as the toughest one. In this instance, I really do think Division Three is probably going to be the toughest one to win of the three. And you look at, I'll start with the quarter of death, and I'll get into it a lot more, but that Upper Peninsula portion of the bracket, Houghton, Hancock, Marquette, Sault Ste. Marie, and that's an absolute gauntlet. All four of those teams, I think, could have a legitimate shot at making a playoff run. The Bay Reps kind of bound for a state title run after given all the prospects and talent that they have on that roster. Excuse me. Can East Grand Rapids get back to the Division Three final? Orchard Lake St. Mary's has been a top team all season long. I, in particular, didn't really see that coming, and they've been, undoubtedly a top five team, wire to wire, start to finish. Flint Powers, absolutely capable of repeating as champions and has a title to defend there. So D3 to me is the most wide open of the three divisions, as I mentioned, with as many as 6 teams with a legitimate shot at winning a state title in March. So with that, now let me bounce back. I'll get back into the regions here. And I'm going to kind of lump. Are my numbers right? Yeah, my numbers are off on my sheet. Okay. I'm going to lump. Whoops. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. That was cool. Whoops. All right. I'm going to get into Region 17. Small but mighty. Absolutely. You look at Houghton, Hancock, Jeffers, Calumet. Houghton, obviously, and Hancock both have turned heads all season long. Calumet is a program I'll never sleep on. They're always in contention and just play the game the right way. Kids that work hard. And so even despite their 7-16-2 record here, still absolutely a threat. And then I've heard nothing but great things about Jeffers this season and how far that program has come, the turnaround they've done, the job that's being done there in Jeffers. So to me, this is another region where all 4 teams are in the mix, and you're not going to have an easy game in this group. So I do have Houghton and Hancock prevailing here and setting the stage for an interesting matchup, regardless of who comes out of this region with the other Upper Peninsula region. How do I want to do this? Let me just go through this I'll open up both regions and then we'll talk about it. I'll do it that way. I don't think any section of any bracket in any division is as loaded as the two UP regions. I mentioned Region 17 and how all four teams are legit teams. Marquette, the Sioux, Escanaba, even Manistee and Kingsford on the other in the other region are all solid squads. As many as five teams could come out of this quarter and make it to the Final Four, with another three teams capable of upsetting the status quo and making things messy. So I expect Hancock to give Houghton a real good game in the Region 17 final. Um, Hancock is still probably a year, maybe 2 years away from really making a playoff run. They've just got some young guys, some really promising young guys. Kilpella on the back end, I've talked about ad nauseum. Tevin Stukel, Brady Axford are two top level forwards that are just freshmen right now. So that program is going to be one we're going to want to watch for the next, not just obviously they're going to be a threat this playoffs, but for many years to come, I think could really be a power here in Division Three. On the other side, the other region, a potential Marquette versus Sault Ste. Marie matchup in the Region 18 final, I think could be the best of all games on Regional Final Wednesday. I think that says a lot. I love the way both of these teams play. Would be an absolute chess match. Great goaltending on both sides, and just a fast-paced, forecheck your face off type of game, where both teams are just up and down and just a tough, hard hockey game there that I think all coaches would love to watch, if I'm being honest. So I will say this: whoever does survive this quarter of the bracket is likely to be the favorite to win the whole damn thing. Houghton's, who everyone's kind of been talking about all season, but Marquette has put a scare into them on several occasions. And I got to be honest, like the Sioux is every bit as good as Marquette is. Cam Labadie is an STUD stud. And I don't use that word lightly. I think that's the most overused word in hockey. But Labadie is a stud. The forecheck for the Sioux is relentless. Corson Pace, Cale Bell on the back end, they're great puck movers there too. So there's a lot of components of the Sault Ste. Marie team that I like a lot as well. I'm taking Marquette over Sault Ste. Marie just because somebody has to win that game. I'm going to lean, I guess, in favor of Marquette there, but maybe more so because I'm projecting ahead to what could be as well. We've been talking about the Gremlins a bunch, and for good reason. They're special, but I think both Sault Ste. Marie and Marquette present difficult matchups for Houghton. You get the Gremlins away from the friendly confines of D Stadium. I get a little worried what might happen. Ultimately, Marquette, who is tried and true, battle tested, played all over the state. They've already put scares into Houghton multiple times. I think they get it done this time, and maybe shock the Michigan high school hockey world a little bit here with an upset there in the quarterfinals. All right, we'll keep moving here. Region 19. I'm going to buzz through this pretty quick because I don't see much resistance there for the Bay reps. And as we look ahead, I'm kind of comparing the reps in Division 3 to what Byron Center faces in Division 2. They really could cruise to a Final Four with very little resistance. And then depending on what type of matchup you draw there, could even cruise into a championship game too. So as I look at Region 20, I think it's kind of a similar story for Alpena. I got to tip my cap to Alpena too, by the way. Like, they lost their top two contributors from a season ago, but in two big contributors. Like, it wasn't just like they graduated a couple kids. Like, these were kids they may have even been expecting to have this season and lost, but still managed to win 15 games. Got a great goal scorer in Garrett Hamp, solid defenseman in Luke Miller. They got other nice pieces: Gavin Winterstein, Brody Misiak, Ethan Walker, Clark Weir. Like, there's some really good young talent on this Alpina team. And then plus Parker Schultz is one of the best goalies in the class of 2027. I think he's a really solid freshman goalie there. In a timeshare right now, which is perfectly fine for a freshman goalie, but he's a guy who could really take over, take the reins in the coming seasons. So just to have those pieces is an incredible luxury for Alpina. So I think they cruise here to a regional championship. Um, and and set up a very tough matchup there then with the Bay Reps in the quarterfinals. And Alpina, like I mentioned, as talented as they are, a bit young, and I think that's where the Reps' experience and just overall talent might take over there and push the Reps into Plymouth and into the Final Four. So okay, moving along here. We'll go to the west side for a very tough, another small but mighty. It's only four teams, but holy shit, is this tough? Sorry for cussing, but sometimes you really got to express the magnitude of the situation. Three of the four teams are in my top 25 currently, and all three could end up winning this region too, depending on how things shake out. So there's some real gamers in this region, just guys who can flat out play hockey. Trent Goheen and net, Glenn Green, Jack Mickus. There's a ton across the board on multiple teams here. So um, as scary. So let me set the stage here. East Grand Rapids GRCC is my regional final here. As scary as Grand Rapids Christian and GRCC could be in these spots, East just has more depth and ability in the middle of their lineup that I feel the others lack at this stage of the tournament. Their centers, the last time I watched East Grand Rapids, were Ian McKagan, Glenn Green, James Albers. Like, show me another team in Division Three, let alone this region, that's going to go three deep down the middle like that. Then you sprinkle in guys like Scotty Millman, Charlie Hoekstra, JT LeMange. Like, there's just too many options here offensively for East Grand Rapids. And, I think Goheen in net for Grand Rapids Catholic Central has the ability to slow down EGR's offense and give the Cougars a chance. But ultimately, I just think the Pioneers are too much, especially with the experience of making a playoff run last season. So going with the Pioneers here. As we go into Region 22, we kind of shift back towards mid-Michigan. It was Flint Powers, Jackson. Like, we kind of get back towards the middle of the state here. I think I'll fast forward a little bit here. I do think so. I'm setting the stage here for Orchard Lake and Flint Powers, but there's potential for Zach Jackala to really throw this region into chaos if he mounts a huge performance in goal for Lumen Christi. He's capable of making things very interesting against Flint Powers. He's got a 9.44 save percentage. Powers and Orchard Lake went to overtime a few weeks back, certainly validating how close I suspected these two teams to be in a playoff matchup. I don't think the regional final has as much drama, though. I like the Eaglets to take care of business and end the defending champs' reign over D3. But like I said, Lumen Christi could make that semifinal matchup interesting and could even frustrate some offenses there, an offense there from Orchard Lake. Jackala has seen a lot of work this season. I'm kind of circling back to, I wanted to finish my thought on Lumen Christi and kind of got ahead of myself. But Jackala has seen, I wrote in the blog on pdspicks.com, I forget, like 8 or 9 games of 40 shots or more. Like, he's used to being under duress and facing a lot of shots. And Powers will absolutely test him. If he survives that test, he's absolutely going to see another one from Orchard Lake. But he's not going to shy away from it. He's not a guy who hasn't been under duress before. So because of that, I think he at least gives the Titans a chance to make things interesting in that region. But ultimately, like I said, I got chalk prevailing here, and then Orchard Lake over Flint Powers. But that sets up a very interesting matchup at the state tournament level there with East Grand Rapids. I think most of the hockey world was stunned last March when EGR beat Houghton in the state semifinal. I know I was, anyways. Like I even texted Chris and was like, "Whoa, like great win, buddy! Like that was awesome." Um, I think a matchup here with Orchard Lake, they're probably not favored, especially considering the Eaglets have just been the higher ranked team all season long. But I like East's depth and their scoring diversity to pull off another upset here that leaves the hockey world shocked yet again. So if you don't know, now you know. And I'm on the EGR bandwagon. I'm on the train. I ain't getting off. We're riding this baby all the way to Plymouth. So, all right, here we go. We'll keep moving here into Region 23. We continue to progress and move farther east with our regions here too. So, uh, this has the potential to be kind of an interesting region just because Cranbrook leaves the door open just enough. I'm picking Cranbrook in this spot, but with a bit of hesitation. The Cranes aren't super deep, and the offense isn't very explosive. They've only scored more than 3 goals in a game twice this season, which is kind of hard to believe. But they play a very difficult schedule. I get that, and playing in the MIHL is no easy task. But because of that, it makes it lends me to think both matchups, whether it be with Marysville or potentially here with Liggett, are going to be low scoring. So that's going to keep Marysville in a game that maybe they wouldn't normally be in. And it's going to keep Liggett in a game that they might not normally be in. Marysville has some players too. They have 12 guys that are in double figures on the season. And some of that may lend itself to the schedule as well, but you've still got guys that are contributing and that have seen a lot of ice and a lot of pucks. So Marysville is a bit of a threat there, I think, at the semifinal level. I do think Cranbrook clears that, but certainly maybe not as easy as it has been in years past. And then Liggett has got a guy like Gary Stacy, who's been real good for the Knights. So there's threats there for Cranbrook. And like I said, I just don't expect them to dominate this region, maybe quite like they have in previous years. So the other part about this for either Liggett or Marysville is I believe it's at Wallace. So it's at Cranbrook's barn. You got to go in there and not only beat probably a top, one of the top teams, a favored team, I would think in this instance too. But you got to do it at their place too. So that makes it real tough. I know Liggett's the higher seed here, but fork to my nose. If you're going to tell me who's the favorite, I'm taking Cranbrook there as the favorite. So, and again, following through on that, taking Cranbrook to win the region. So we get into the final region. How about that? How are we doing on time? 1:13. Well, we've been at it for a minute here. This is a pretty lengthy stream here. But yeah, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this so far. I've enjoyed it. It took me a long time to prep and prepare and get to this point. And again, I mentioned that's kind of why I've been radio silent for the last couple of weeks, was in preparation for this very episode. So yeah, pretty lengthy. Hope you guys enjoy. You want more, hit me up on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can leave comments here on YouTube, rate and review on Apple and Spotify as well. I get all that feedback. Email me at you can email me at contactpdspicks@gmail.com as well. I love talking hockey with anybody and everybody. So if you want to share your thoughts, share your picks, by all means, there's many ways you can get a hold of me. So happy to have those conversations. All right, let's end on a high note here. We'll go out with Region 24. How far do I want to go here? I'll go the whole way. Whatever. I'm going to do this. All right, here we go. I was so high on Country Day coming into the season. But then they finished the regular season 10-13-2. Maybe that's a little suboptimal given how high I was on them. But this is where I think they might make me look like a bit of a genius, though. Okay, hear me out. The Yellow Jackets will be the only team in any of the three divisions to win three playoff games en route to a regional championship. Did you follow that? So if you're looking at the bracket here, they win a quarterfinal, they win a semifinal, they win the championship. I don't think any other team uh, makes that run from start to finish for a regional championship. Uh, I think they win the first round, get to a tough matchup with Gross Eel. Gross Eel's top line is nasty. Fisher Gurney, Tate Hubler, Adelar Hovis. He's a top freshman that I like a lot. It's a dangerous line, but after that, things get a little dicey for Gross Eel. And I think Coach Frank Novak's team will scheme and strategize and defend and take away time and space that that top line has kind of enjoyed all season long. So I think they'll be able to scheme it up a little bit, use their depth to get past Gross Eel there in the semifinals. And then, I'd be lying here if I said uh, RGR didn't scare me. Ryan Rainey's had a hell of a senior season. And it's a prideful program that's won 6 straight regional championships. Holy crap. Yellow Jackets have played Gabriel Richard twice this season, tied them once 2-2, lost to them 4-3. But Country Day outshot them by a combined 72-48 in those outings. So I'm actually taking Clay Spencer and the boys. Third time's a charm. Country Day back in the state tournament for the second consecutive season. And it doesn't stop there. How about that? I mentioned the vulnerabilities of this Cranbrook team. That revenge tour for Country Day, I think, continues here throughout the playoffs with a win over a Cranes team that beat the Yellow Jackets 3-2 in a shootout earlier this season. The Country Day has been a team that's been right there, right in the mix. A bounce here, a bounce there, doesn't go their way. They lose 3-2. They lose a shootout 4-3. Like they're right there on the cusp, and the coin just isn't landing heads instead of tails type thing. So I think the tides are turning here. They've got a real great chance to exact some revenge on some of those teams and get on the right side of things here in a deep playoff run back to Plymouth. So, all right, we will get into the Division III Final Four. Let me set the stage real quick. Marquette, East Grand Rapids, Bay Reps, and as I just mentioned, Country Day. I just ranted and raved about Country Day. Their schedule November through February may have had some growing pains, but I think all of that was in preparation for this long playoff run. And after I've kind of hyped them up for the last 2 or 3 minutes, I'm gonna squash them here a little bit. Going with the top seeded Marquette in this instance as my team out of the UP. But whether it's Houghton or Sault Ste. Marie or Hancock, I think fill in the blank from the UP is going to have success in Plymouth. For me, it's Marquette. They're just a complete team, top to bottom, left to right. When they're on, they're so tough to beat. And no team in the state is more traveled than these guys are either. Bus legs is a current state of existence, I think, for Marquette, given the amount of trips they've made downstate. So I'm taking Marquette there. On the other side, I've made mention of the Bay Reps' struggles against opponents with depth. And I know there's a few hockey moms that are probably going to hate me for this pick, but it's just not a great matchup here for the Reps. Grant Lucas, Thomas Boynton Fisher, Ethan Coleman, Lars Miller. You'd be hard-pressed to find a better top line / power play unit in the state than this group. But it's the second and third lines of East Grand Rapids, that fourth and fifth defenseman for EGR that makes the difference in matchups like this and at this stage of the tournament. I will say this, though. If Tyler Boynton Fisher, the goaltender, if he has a stellar stand-on-your-head 40-plus save performance, the Reps will have a shot. that's a lot to ask of a first year sophomore goalie though. But I won't rule it out. So I'm gonna duck and cover and pick EGR to be back in the Division III state title game there. And then setting the stage there, Marquette and EGR is actually an exceptional matchup here. Two very deep, very talented, very well coached teams. Would be a fun one to watch if it comes to fruition, where two offensively skilled teams end up in a 2-to-1 type of chess match, right? Like both are capable of scoring 4, 5, 6 goals, but this is one where you're expecting a shootout and you end up with a defensive struggle. Could very well see that unfolding here. I think Bryant Lee ultimately gives Marquette the edge in net, though. So I'm leaning towards. Oh, excuse me, not Bryant. I screwed up here. Hang on. Sorry. Let me get this right. Sorry. I have to do this again. This is why I need to do my homework, and clearly not doing homework well. Uh, Gosh, I'm just blanking on his name. Cole Kelly. Bryant Lee plays for Houghton. But hey, maybe Bryant Lee wants to continue to play out. Anyways, so excuse me, apologies for that. Cole Kelly gives Marquette the edge in net. So I'm leaning towards the Great White North and the Upper Peninsula getting its first state title since 2016. How about that? All right. So let me bring this back to center. God, that was so great. I was just so perfect. And then I'm dropping the wrong goalie's name from the wrong team. I apologize, Cole. I was on a roll, buddy. It's feeling good. Nonetheless. All right, so there's my picks for Division I, Division II, Division III, all 24 regions. On top of that, if you want to go to pdspicks.com, I also wrote a blog offering up 3 teams from every single region with a chance to win some hardware over the next 2 weeks. So be sure to check that out. I've ranked them in terms of favorite, contender, and long shot. So you can go take a look at that as well. And then we'll go from there. So an hour and 22 minutes. This was about as long as I thought it would be. So I enjoyed it. Thank you all for bearing with me. Hopefully the presentation and everything was as stellar as I felt it went. I felt it went pretty good. I feel pretty good about that. So whether you've been watching on YouTube, whether you've been listening on Apple or Spotify, appreciate the support. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, rate, and review on the podcast platforms, and then also connect with me on social media. You like my picks? Let's talk about it. You hate my picks? Let's talk about it too. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at PD's Picks. At PD's Picks. You can find me just about anywhere and connect with me just about anytime. So whether these picks come to fruition, great. Whether these picks are wrong, great. Prove me wrong too. Let's have some fun here. There's no better time in the hockey calendar than single elimination playoffs. Do or die, win or go home. The sad reality of it is only 3 teams in the entire state are going to end their season with a win. So it's a pressure-filled, action-packed time of year that I look forward to every single season. So until next time, skate hard, have fun. I'll see you guys at the rink soon.